Mom, you can't wear that to Uncle Robert's wedding, my daughter Victoria said, looking at my navy blue dress with the same disgust she might reserve for roadkill. People will think we can't afford to dress you properly. I stared at the reflection in my bedroom mirror. The dress was elegant, modest, and cost more than most people spend on their monthly groceries. But according to Victoria, it made me look desperate for attention. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. That was 3 months ago. Today, I stood in my walk-in closet, surrounded by thousands of dollars worth of designer clothes, holding a faded floral dress that Victoria had picked out from a thrift store specifically for me to wear to family gatherings. The irony wasn't lost on me that the woman who controlled every thread I wore in public was dressed head to toe in clothing I had purchased for her. My name is Ramona Douglas, but everyone calls me Mona. I'm 62 years old, and for the past 8 years since my husband passed away, I've been living what most people would consider a comfortable life. I own a successful chain of boutique clothing stores across 3 states, built from the ground up with my late husband Charlie. What people don't know is that my own daughter has been systematically humiliating me in front of our entire family, all while wearing clothes that I've paid for. It started small, the way these things always do. Victoria would make casual comments about my outfit choices when we'd meet for lunch. "That color washes you out, Mom." Or, "Those shoes are a bit young for you, don't you think?" At first, I thought she was just being helpful. Victoria had always been fashion conscious, even as a child. She studied fashion merchandising in college, and I was proud when she landed a job at a prestigious fashion magazine in the city. But somewhere along the way, her suggestions became demands. Her helpful hints became cutting criticisms. And before I knew it, I was second-guessing every piece of clothing I put on, especially when I knew I'd be seeing family. The transformation didn't happen overnight. It was gradual, calculated, like water slowly eroding stone. Victoria would volunteer to take me shopping for age-appropriate clothes, steering me away from anything remotely stylish or flattering. She'd insist that certain colors made me look washed out, that certain cuts were too young for me, that I needed to dress more conservatively now that I was getting older. Meanwhile, every time she visited my house, she'd admire something in my closet. "Oh, this blazer is gorgeous, Mom. You never wear it anymore, do you?" Or, "This dress would look amazing on me for that work event I mentioned." Before I knew what was happening, my closet was being systematically transferred to hers, piece by expensive piece. The wedding 3 months ago was the turning point. Uncle Robert was Charlie's brother, and it was the first major family event since Charlie's funeral. I wanted to look dignified, beautiful, worthy of the woman Charlie had loved. I chose a navy blue dress that Charlie had always complimented me in, paired with pearl earrings he'd given me for our 20th anniversary. Victoria arrived at my house an hour before we were supposed to leave, took one look at me, and shook her head. "Absolutely not," she said, as if I were a teenager trying to sneak out in something inappropriate. "You'll embarrass us both." "What's wrong with it?" I asked, genuinely confused. The dress was tasteful, expensive, and flattering. "It's too formal, too attention-seeking. People will think you're trying to upstage the bride." She pulled out a bag she'd brought with her. "I picked this up for you yesterday. It's much more appropriate." The dress she handed me was beige, shapeless, and clearly from a discount store. It hung on me like a sack, making me look 20 years older and 30 pounds heavier. When I protested, Victoria's face hardened. "Mom, I'm trying to help you. Trust me, I know about these things. This is what women your age should be wearing to weddings. You don't want people talking, do you?" I changed into the beige dress, and we went to the wedding. All day, I felt invisible, frumpy, ashamed. Cousins who hadn't seen me in years kept asking if I was feeling all right, if everything was okay financially. Meanwhile, Victoria glided through the reception in a stunning emerald green dress that I recognized because I'd bought it for her the month before, along with the matching shoes and handbag. That night, I stood in my bathroom, looking at myself in that awful beige dress, and something clicked. This wasn't about appropriateness or age or family perception. This was about control. Victoria had been systematically diminishing me, making me smaller, less noticeable, less threatening, while she enhanced her own appearance with my money and my clothes. The pattern became impossible to ignore once I started paying attention. Every family gathering, every social event, Victoria would show up early with a carefully selected outfit for me. Always something designed to make me fade into the background. Always something that made me look older, frumpier, less put together than I actually was. At Thanksgiving last year, she brought me a brown polyester pantsuit that made me look like I worked in a cafeteria from the 1980s. She wore a cream cashmere sweater and designer jeans, both purchased with a credit card linked to my business account. At my niece's graduation party, she insisted I wear a floral house dress that belonged in a nursing home. She wore a chic black cocktail dress that she'd borrowed from my closet 6 months earlier and never returned. At Christmas dinner, she brought me a red sweater covered in jingling bells and cartoon reindeer, claiming it was festive and fun. She wore an elegant burgundy dress with a silk scarf that cost more than most people's car payments. Each time, I told myself I was being paranoid. Each time, I convinced myself that Victoria just wanted to help, that she had better fashion sense than I did, that she knew what was appropriate for someone my age. Each time, I put on whatever she brought me and smiled through the humiliation. But the comments from family members were getting harder to ignore. "Mona, dear, are you feeling all right?" my sister-in-law would ask, concern creasing her features. "You look so tired lately." Or worse, the whispered conversations I'd catch fragments of. "Is Mona having money troubles? She's dressing so differently these days. Maybe the business isn't doing as well as we thought." The irony was crushing. I was more financially successful than I'd ever been. The boutique chain was thriving, with new locations opening faster than I could manage them. I had a beautiful home, a healthy investment portfolio, and enough money to buy anything I wanted. But at family events, I looked like a charity case, while my daughter looked like a fashion model. 3 weeks ago, something happened that changed everything. I was at my flagship store, going through the new fall inventory, when I overheard 2 of my employees talking in the back room. "Did you see Victoria Douglas on Instagram yesterday?" one of them said. "She was at some charity gala wearing the most gorgeous vintage Chanel jacket." "The daughter of the owner?" the other replied. "Lucky girl. Must be nice to have a mom who owns boutiques. Actually, I think I saw that jacket here last month. It was in the vintage collection. Cost like $3,000. My blood went cold. I pulled out my phone and looked up Victoria's Instagram account, something I rarely did because social media always made me feel old and disconnected. There she was, at a charity gala I knew nothing about, wearing a vintage Chanel jacket that I recognized immediately. It was part of a special collection I'd acquired for the store, and yes, it had cost $3,000. It was also supposed to be on display in my boutique, not on my daughter's back at some social event. I scrolled through more of her recent photos, my heart sinking with each image. There was the Hermes scarf I'd
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story.
been looking for in my closet. There were the Jimmy Choo shoes I'd bought for myself but never got to wear. There was the vintage Versace dress that had mysteriously disappeared from my store's inventory. Victoria wasn't just controlling what I wore to family events. She was stealing from me, taking the beautiful clothes and accessories that I'd worked my entire life to be able to afford, and using them to build her own image while forcing me to look like someone who shopped at thrift stores and clearance racks. That night, I went through my closet with a notebook, cataloging everything that was missing. The list was staggering. Over the past 2 years, Victoria had taken, or borrowed, thousands of dollars worth of my personal clothing and accessories. Dresses, shoes, handbags, jewelry, scarves, coats. Some of it she'd asked for, claiming she needed something for work or a special event. Some of it had simply vanished without explanation. I checked my credit card statements and found charge after charge at high-end stores, all authorized by Victoria, who had a card on my account for emergencies. Except these weren't emergencies. These were shopping sprees, makeovers, wardrobe updates, all funded by my money while I was being dressed like a bag lady at family events. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. This wasn't just about clothes or money. This was about respect, dignity, identity. Victoria was systematically erasing me, making me invisible, stealing not just my clothes but my confidence, my sense of self, my right to look and feel beautiful. I thought about all the times I'd stood in front of a mirror, looking at myself in whatever shapeless, colorless outfit Victoria had selected for me, feeling ashamed and confused. I thought about the pitying looks from family members, the whispered concerns about my financial situation, the gradual erosion of my social confidence. I thought about Charlie, and how he used to tell me I was the most beautiful woman in any room, how he'd buy me gorgeous clothes and jewelry because he said I deserved to shine, how proud he'd been of my success, my business acumen, my ability to build something substantial from nothing. Victoria was stealing more than my clothes. She was stealing my identity as a successful, confident, beautiful woman. She was reducing me to a caricature of a sad old lady who didn't know how to dress herself properly. But I wasn't sad, and I wasn't helpless, and I certainly wasn't poor. I was Ramona Douglas, owner of a successful business empire, a woman who'd built something meaningful with her own hands and mind. I was a woman who'd loved and been loved, who'd raised a daughter and buried a husband, who'd survived loss and kept building. And I was done being diminished. I spent that entire weekend planning. I thought about every family event, every humiliating outfit, every stolen piece of clothing. I thought about Victoria's carefully constructed image, built on my money and my clothes while she reduced me to a frumpy shadow of myself. The next family event was coming up fast. My nephew's engagement party, scheduled for the following Saturday. Victoria had already texted me about it, saying she'd be by on Friday evening to help me choose something appropriate. I knew exactly what that meant. She'd show up with another hideous outfit designed to make me invisible, while she wore something gorgeous and expensive that I'd paid for. But this time was going to be different. This time I had a plan. I started by doing something I should have done years ago. I called my lawyer, Mitchell Harrison, who'd handled Charlie's estate and my business legal needs for the past decade. I told him I needed to review all the authorized users on my credit cards and business accounts. "Is there a problem, Mona?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. "There might be," I said carefully. "I need to understand exactly who has access to what, and I need to know my options for changing that access." Mitchell walked me through everything. Victoria had authorized user status on 3 of my personal credit cards and 1 business card. She also had access to one of my business accounts, something I had set up years ago when she was in college, and I wanted her to be able to handle emergency expenses. "How much has been charged on these accounts?" I asked. The numbers were staggering. Over the past 2 years, Victoria had charged over $40,000 to my cards. Clothes, shoes, accessories, salon visits, spa treatments, even rent for a more expensive apartment in the city. "Mitchell," I said slowly, "what would happen if I revoked all of her access? Immediately?" "You can do that any time," he said. "These are your accounts. You have complete control over who can access them." I made the changes that very day. Every card, every account, every automatic payment I'd been covering for Victoria. All of it stopped immediately. Then I went shopping. Not the kind of shopping Victoria had been doing with my money, but strategic shopping. I bought the most stunning dress I could find, a deep midnight blue that made my silver hair look sophisticated and my eyes sparkle. I bought shoes that made my legs look miles long, and a handbag that cost more than most people's monthly salary. I also bought a very specific outfit for Victoria, something I planned to give her as a gift at the engagement party, something that would teach her exactly how it felt to be dressed inappropriately for a family event. Tuesday morning, my phone started ringing. Victoria's credit card had been declined at her usual coffee shop, and she was calling in a panic. "Mom, there's something wrong with my card," she said, her voice tight with anxiety. "It's not working anywhere. I think someone might have stolen my information." "That's terrible," I said, keeping my voice carefully neutral. "Have you called the credit card company?" "I called and they said the account has been closed." "But that doesn't make sense." "I didn't close it." I said thoughtfully. "Well, it's not your account, dear. It's mine." And I decided I didn't need any authorized users anymore. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. "What do you mean?" Victoria's voice was smaller now, uncertain. I mean exactly what I said. I've closed your access to all my accounts. If you need something, you can buy it with your own money. But Mom, I don't understand. Did I do something wrong? The innocence in her voice almost made me laugh. Did she really think I hadn't noticed? Did she think I was that blind, that foolish, that willing to be taken advantage of indefinitely? We'll talk about it later, I said. I'm quite busy today. I hung up before she could respond and I turned off my phone. I had work to do, and I didn't want any distractions. Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday passed in a blur of phone calls and text messages from Victoria. She was angry, confused, desperate. She needed money for rent, for groceries, for the dress she'd planned to wear to the engagement party. Each message was more frantic than the last. I didn't respond to any of them. Friday evening arrived, and with it came Victoria, just as I'd expected. She knocked on my door with her usual confidence, carrying her usual bag of carefully selected humiliation. "Mom, we need to talk," she said. As soon as I opened the door, "I don't know what's going on with the credit cards, but there's obviously been some kind of mistake." "Come in," I said pleasantly. "I'm just finishing getting ready for tomorrow." She followed me into the living room, and I could see her taking in my appearance. I was wearing a simple but elegant black dress. My hair was freshly styled, and I was wearing makeup for the first time in months. "You look nice," she said, sounding surprised. "But I brought you something more appropriate for tomorrow." She held up the familiar bag. "That's thoughtful of you," I said. "But I've already chosen what I'm wearing." "Mom, I really think you should trust me on this. You know I have a good eye for what works at family events." "You certainly do," I said, smiling. "In fact, I have something for you too." I walked to the closet by the front door and pulled out a shopping bag. "I thought you might like this for tomorrow." Victoria's face lit up. Despite everything that had happened with the credit cards, she still expected gifts, still expected to be dressed beautifully at my expense. She reached into the bag and pulled out a brown polyester pantsuit, exactly like the one she'd made me wear to Thanksgiving last year. Her face fell. "What is this?" she asked. "It's your outfit for tomorrow. I thought it would be perfect for you. Very age-appropriate, very modest. You don't want people thinking you're trying too hard, do you?" The realization was dawning on her face slowly, like watching someone solve a particularly difficult puzzle. "Mom, this is ridiculous. I can't wear this to Mike's engagement party. People will think something's wrong with our family." "Something is wrong with our family," I said calmly. "Our family has a daughter who's been stealing from her mother for years, while systematically humiliating her at every social gathering." Victoria's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "I haven't been stealing. You gave me access to those accounts." "For emergencies," I said. "Not for building a wardrobe worth more than most people's cars. Not for funding a lifestyle you couldn't afford on your own salary. But I needed those things for work, for my career. And I needed to feel beautiful and confident at family events. But instead, you made sure I looked like someone who shops at garage sales, while you wore clothes that cost more than most people make in a month." I walked to my dining room table and picked up a folder I'd prepared. Inside were printouts of Victoria's Instagram posts, credit card statements, and a detailed list of everything she'd taken from my closet. $43,000, I said, opening the folder. "That's how much you've charged to my cards in the past 2 years. Not including the thousands of dollars worth of clothing and accessories you've taken from my personal collection." Victoria stared at the papers, her face pale. "I didn't realize it was that much." "You didn't realize because you never had to pay for any of it. And while you were building your perfect image with my money, you were making sure I looked as awful as possible in front of our entire family. I was trying to help you dress appropriately." Appropriately for what? For being invisible? For being dismissed? For being pitied? I walked to my laptop and pulled up Victoria's Instagram account. Photo after photo of her at social events, charity galas, work parties, always looking stunning, always wearing something expensive. "This is the vintage Chanel jacket from my store," I said, pointing to one photo. $3,000. "This is the Hermes scarf from my personal collection. This is the Louboutin shoes I bought for myself, but never got to wear, because they mysteriously disappeared from my closet. Victoria was silent now, staring at the screen. "Do you want to know what's really sad about all of this?" I continued. "It's not the money. I can afford to lose $40,000. It's not even the clothes, though I loved many of those pieces. It's that you thought so little of me, respected me so little, that you believed you could get away with it indefinitely." "Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't think. You didn't think I'd notice? You didn't think I'd care? You didn't think I deserved to look beautiful and feel confident? Or you didn't think I was smart enough to figure it out?" Victoria finally looked up at me, and for the first time in years I saw something real in her expression. Not the calculated concern or fake helpfulness she usually wore around me, but genuine shame. "I don't know what I was thinking," she said quietly. "I know exactly what you were thinking," I replied. "You were thinking that I was old and foolish and grateful for any attention from my successful daughter. You were thinking that I'd be so happy to have your involvement in my life that I wouldn't question why it always made me feel smaller." I closed the laptop and walked back to where she was sitting. "Tomorrow, you have a choice," I said. "You can wear the outfit I bought for you, the same kind of outfit you've been forcing me to wear for years. You can experience what it feels like to walk into a family event looking frumpy and invisible while everyone else looks polished and put together. Or you can stay home." "Mom, please. I can't wear that to Mike's engagement party." "Everyone will be there. Everyone has been there for every event where you've humiliated me. Every wedding, every graduation, every holiday gathering where you made sure I looked like someone to be pitied, while you looked like someone to be envied." Victoria stared at the brown pantsuit like it was a live snake. "What do you want from me?" she asked finally. "I want you to understand," I said. "I want you to feel what I've felt. And then I want you to decide what kind of daughter you want to be going forward." She was quiet for a long time, holding the ugly outfit in her hands. "What if I apologize? What if I pay you back?" "With what money?" I asked. "Your magazine salary barely covers your actual living expenses. You've been living a lifestyle funded entirely by me while making me look like a charity case. I could get a loan. I could work extra jobs." "You could." I agreed. "But first, you're going to understand what it feels like to be on the other side of this dynamic." Victoria looked around my living room as if seeing it for the first time. The beautiful furniture, the expensive art, the obvious signs of success and taste. "I never thought about how it made you feel," she said quietly. "No," I said, "you didn't. Because you were too busy thinking about how it made you feel. Powerful, important, in control." She nodded slowly, tears starting to form in her eyes. "If I wear this tomorrow," she said, holding up the pantsuit, "will you forgive me? If you wear it tomorrow, we'll start having an honest conversation about our relationship. Forgiveness will take time." Victoria looked at the outfit again, then back at me. "Okay," she said finally. "I'll wear it." I felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction that she was finally going to experience consequences for her actions, and sadness that it had come to this at all. "Good," I said. "I'll pick you up at 6 tomorrow." After Victoria left, I sat in my beautiful living room, surrounded by the things I'd worked my entire life to afford, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt powerful. Not powerful over someone else, but powerful over my own life, my own choices, my own image. Tomorrow would be interesting. Tomorrow, Victoria would walk into a family event wearing an outfit designed to make her invisible and unappealing, while I would wear something that made me feel beautiful and confident. Tomorrow, the roles would be reversed, and maybe, just maybe, my daughter would finally understand what she'd been doing to me all these years. I walked to my closet and pulled out the midnight blue dress I'd bought for the engagement party. It was elegant, sophisticated, and utterly beautiful. I held it up to myself in the full-length mirror and smiled. For the first time in years, I was going to walk into a family event looking like the successful, confident, beautiful woman I actually was. And Victoria was going to learn what it felt like to be diminished, dismissed, and forgotten. The thought should have made me feel vindictive, but instead, I felt hopeful. Maybe this was what we both needed. Maybe this was the beginning of a real relationship between us, one based on mutual respect, instead of manipulation and control. Or maybe Victoria would learn nothing from this experience, and would continue to see me as someone to be managed and controlled. But if that happened, at least I'd know where I stood. At least I'd know that I'd tried to show her a different way. Either way, I was done being invisible. I was done being managed. I was done being anyone other than exactly who I was. Ramona Douglas, successful businesswoman, loving mother, and a woman who deserved to shine. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made everything feel possible. I woke up early, not because I had to, but because I wanted to savor every moment of preparation. For the first time in years, I was going to dress for a family event the way I wanted to dress, not the way Victoria thought I should dress. I started with a long, hot bath, adding lavender oil that I'd bought months ago but never used, because Victoria always made me feel like I was trying too hard when I took time for myself. I washed my hair with the expensive shampoo I'd been saving for special occasions, realizing as I did that every day I chose to feel good about myself should be a special occasion. After my bath, I called my hairdresser, Sandra, who'd been styling my hair for 15 years. She was booked solid for Saturday, but when I explained that this was important, she agreed to squeeze me in. "Mona, honey, what's the occasion?" Sandra asked as she worked magic with her curling iron. "You seem different today, more alive." I caught her eye in the mirror. "I'm taking my life back." She smiled knowingly. "About time. You're a beautiful woman, Mona. I never understood why you stopped taking care of yourself the way you used to." As Sandra styled my hair into soft waves that framed my face perfectly, I thought about how many appointments I'd canceled over the years, because Victoria had made me feel vain for wanting to look good. How many times I'd walked into Sandra's salon feeling excited about a new style, only to have Victoria criticize it later, making me feel foolish for trying to look younger or more attractive. "Sandra," I said as she put the finishing touches on my hair, "do you remember about 2 years ago when I started coming in less often? Of course. I was worried about you. You seemed to lose interest in everything that used to make you happy." It wasn't that I lost interest. Someone convinced me that caring about my appearance was inappropriate for a woman my age. Sandra's reflection in the mirror looked angry. "That's the biggest load of nonsense I've ever heard. Taking care of yourself isn't about age. It's about self-respect." I left the salon feeling more confident than I had in years. My hair looked gorgeous, sophisticated, but not overly done. I felt like myself again. Like the woman Charlie had fallen in love with. Like the woman who'd built a successful business through determination and good instincts. Back home, I took my time getting dressed. The midnight blue dress fit perfectly, skimming my curves in all the right places without being inappropriate. I added the pearl necklace Charlie had given me for our 25th anniversary, pearl earrings to match, and a delicate bracelet that caught the light when I moved. I looked at myself in the full-length mirror and smiled. This was who I really was. Not the frumpy, forgettable woman Victoria had been turning me into, but Ramona Douglas, successful entrepreneur, loving mother, and confident woman who deserved to take up space in the world. At 5:30, I got in my car and drove to Victoria's apartment building. She lived in a trendy neighborhood downtown, in a converted warehouse that had been turned into luxury lofts. The rent alone was more than most people's mortgage payments, and until this week, I'd been paying for it. I called her from the parking lot. "I'm here." "I'll be right down," she said, her voice tight. When Victoria emerged from the building, I almost didn't recognize her. She was wearing the brown polyester pantsuit I'd given her, paired with sensible shoes and minimal makeup. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she carried a small purse that looked like it came from a discount store. She looked exactly the way she'd been making me look for years. Invisible, forgettable, like someone who'd given up on herself. She got into the passenger seat without saying anything, and we sat in silence for a moment. "How does it feel?" I asked finally. Victoria stared straight ahead. "Awful. I look like someone's dowdy aunt." "Now you know." I never realized how different it would feel to walk out of my building looking like this. The doorman barely acknowledged me. Usually he compliments my outfit or asks about my day. Imagine feeling like that at every family gathering for 2 years. Victoria turned to look at me then. Really look at me. And her eyes widened. "Mom, you look incredible." "Thank you." "I mean it. You look beautiful. Elegant. Like yourself again." "This is who I've always been, Victoria. You just convinced me to hide it." We drove to my nephew Mike's engagement party in silence. I could feel Victoria's discomfort radiating from the passenger seat, and part of me felt guilty for putting her through this. But a larger part of me felt vindicated. Finally, she was experiencing what I'd been experiencing. The party was being held at an upscale restaurant in the historic district, the kind of place where people go to see and be seen. As we pulled into the valet area, I could see other family members arriving, all dressed in their best clothes, all looking polished and put together. "Mom," Victoria said as we got out of the car, "everyone's going to notice how different we both look." "Good," I said. "Let them notice." We walked into the restaurant together, and I immediately felt the shift in energy. Eyes turned toward us, but instead of the pitying glances I'd grown accustomed to, I saw surprise, admiration, curiosity. My sister-in-law Margaret was the first to approach us. "Mona, darling, you look absolutely stunning. That dress is gorgeous on you." "Thank you, Margaret. You look lovely as well." Margaret's eyes shifted to Victoria, and I watched her try to hide her confusion. Victoria, who was usually the picture of style and sophistication, looked like she'd gotten dressed in the dark at a thrift store. "Victoria, how are you, dear?" Margaret asked, her voice carefully neutral. "Fine, thank you," Victoria mumbled, tugging at the hem of her polyester jacket. As we made our way through the room, the pattern repeated itself over and over. Family members complimented my appearance, asked where I'd been hiding such a beautiful dress, told me how radiant I looked, and they struggled to make polite conversation with Victoria, clearly taken aback by her dramatic change in appearance. My cousin Robert approached with his wife Jennifer. "Mona, you look fantastic. That color is perfect on you." "Thank you, Robert." "And Victoria," Jennifer said, pausing slightly. "How interesting to see you in something so different. Very practical." I watched Victoria's face burn with embarrassment. This was exactly how I'd felt at Robert's wedding 3 months ago, when Victoria had made me wear that awful beige dress while she wore the emerald green one that cost more than some people's monthly salary. We found our assigned table, and I noticed that several family members kept glancing our way. Not because they were admiring Victoria's fashion sense, as they usually did, but because they were trying to figure out what had happened to her usual impeccable style. During cocktail hour, my nephew Mike came over to greet us. "Aunt Mona, you look amazing. Mom told me you'd been going through a rough patch, but you certainly don't look it tonight." "Thank you, sweetheart. I feel wonderful." Mike turned to Victoria with a puzzled expression. "Victoria, I barely recognized you. Are you feeling all right?" "I'm fine," Victoria said quickly. "Just trying a different style." "Well," Mike said diplomatically, "it's certainly different." After Mike walked away, Victoria leaned over to me. "This is humiliating. Now you understand. People keep looking at me like something's wrong. People kept looking at me the same way for 2 years. The difference is, they were looking at me with pity, because they thought I couldn't afford nice clothes or didn't know how to dress myself. They're looking at you with confusion because they know you usually look better than this." Victoria was quiet for a moment. "I never thought about how it affected you." "You never asked." During dinner, I found myself genuinely enjoying the conversation at our table. Without the distraction of feeling self-conscious about my appearance, I was able to be present, to engage, to laugh at jokes and share stories. I felt like myself again, like the confident woman I'd been before Victoria started managing my image. Meanwhile, Victoria picked at her food and barely spoke. Every time someone complimented my dress or asked where I'd been shopping, I could see her sink a little further into her chair. "Mona," said my cousin Linda, who was sitting across from us, "I have to ask where you got that dress. It's absolutely gorgeous." Thank you. I bought it at Nordstrom earlier this week. It looks expensive. It was. Linda glanced at Victoria, then back at me. It's so nice to see you dressing like yourself again. For a while there, I was worried that maybe the business wasn't doing well and you were having to cut back on things. I felt Victoria tense beside me. The business is doing very well, actually, better than ever. That's wonderful to hear. I was concerned because you seemed so subdued at family events lately. Not your usual confident self. I was going through some personal challenges, I said carefully, but I'm feeling much better now. After dinner, there was dancing, and several family members asked me to join them on the dance floor. I hadn't danced in years, not since Charlie died, but tonight I felt like moving, like celebrating, like taking up space. Victoria remained seated at our table, declining invitations to dance, clearly uncomfortable with the attention her appearance was drawing. I watched her from the dance floor, and for the first time I felt genuinely sorry for her. Not because she looked bad, but because she was finally experiencing the isolation and self-consciousness that she'd been imposing on me. During a slow song, my brother-in-law James asked me to dance. As we swayed to the music, he said, "Mona, I don't know what you've been doing differently lately, but you seem like a new person tonight. I've been remembering who I really am." Well, whatever it is, keep doing it. You look happier than you have in years. When the song ended, I returned to the table to find Victoria sitting alone, looking miserable. "Are you ready to go?" she asked. "Actually, I'm having a wonderful time. But if you'd like to leave, I can call you a cab." Victoria looked surprised. "You'd stay without me?" "Why not? This is my family too. I haven't enjoyed a family gathering this much in years. Because you look beautiful and I look terrible. Because I feel confident and comfortable in my own skin. The way you look is a choice you made. Just like the way I used to look was a choice you made for me." Victoria stared at me. "You're really not going to let me forget this, are you?" "I'm not trying to punish you, Victoria. I'm trying to help you understand." "Understand what?" "Understand what it feels like to be diminished. To be made invisible. To walk into a room full of people you care about and feel like you don't deserve to be there." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Around us, the party continued, laughter and music and the comfortable buzz of family celebration. "I want to go home," she said finally. "Then go home. But I'm staying." "Mom, please, I can't just leave you here." "Why not? You've been leaving me out of conversations and connections for years by making me look like someone who doesn't belong." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I never meant to hurt you. But you did hurt me, and the fact that you never meant to doesn't make it less real." I reached over and took her hand. "Victoria, I love you. You're my daughter, and nothing will ever change that. But I won't let you control me anymore. I won't let you decide what I can wear or how I should look, or whether I deserve to feel beautiful. What if I promise to stop? What if I promise to never comment on your clothes again? That's not enough. You need to understand why what you did was wrong. You need to feel what I felt. And you need to make real changes, not just promises." Victoria pulled her hand away and stood up. "Fine, I'll call a cab." "Victoria, wait." She turned back to me. "The person you've been pretending to be, the perfectly dressed daughter, with the expensive clothes, and the sophisticated lifestyle, that person was built on money you didn't earn, and clothes you didn't pay for. If you want to have a real relationship with me going forward, you need to figure out who you really are without all of that. And what if I can't afford to be anyone worth knowing? Then you'll learn what it means to build something real instead of something borrowed." Victoria left without saying goodbye, and I watched her walk out of the restaurant in that awful brown pantsuit, shoulders hunched, looking every bit as miserable as she'd made me feel for 2 years. But instead of feeling guilty, I felt liberated. I stayed at the party for another hour, dancing and laughing and enjoying myself in a way I hadn't in years. Family members kept commenting on how wonderful I looked, how happy I seemed, how good it was to see me being myself again. When I finally left, I felt like I was floating. The evening had been everything I'd hoped it would be. I'd reclaimed my place in my family, my confidence in my appearance, my right to feel beautiful and worthy of attention. But more than that, I'd shown Victoria what her behavior actually cost. Not just in money, though the financial impact had been significant, but in dignity, in self-respect, in basic human consideration. The next morning, I woke up feeling better than I had in years. I made myself a proper breakfast, took my time getting dressed in clothes I actually liked, and sat down to plan my next steps. Victoria needed to learn some hard lessons, and I needed to decide what kind of relationship we were going to have going forward. The days of her controlling my appearance and stealing my clothes were over, but that didn't automatically fix the deeper problems between us. I spent Sunday morning going through my closet, making a list of everything Victoria had taken or borrowed and never returned. The list was even longer than I'd remembered. Dresses, shoes, handbags, jewelry, coats, scarves, even lingerie and pajamas. She'd been systematically raiding my wardrobe for years. I also went through my credit card statements more carefully, documenting every charge she'd made. The total was staggering, over $43,000 in the past 2 years alone, and that didn't include the value of the items she'd taken from my store's inventory. Sunday afternoon, my phone started ringing. Victoria called 6 times, but I didn't answer. She left voicemails that progressed from angry to desperate to pleading. "Mom, I know you're angry, but you can't just cut me off completely. Mom, I need to talk to you about the credit cards. I have bills due this week. Mom, please call me back. I can't afford my rent without the card. Mom, I'm sorry about everything. Can we please just talk about this? Mom, I went to the store today to return some things, but they said you'd put a note on my account. What's going on? Mom, people at work are asking questions about why I'm not dressed like usual. I need some of my clothes back." I listened to each voicemail with a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction because Victoria was finally experiencing consequences for her actions, and sadness because it had come to this at all. Monday morning, I drove to my flagship store to make some changes. I found Marcus, my assistant manager, and asked him to pull up Victoria's employee discount account. "Is there a problem, Mrs. Douglas?" Marcus asked. "I need to suspend this account immediately, and I need a detailed report of everything that's been charged to it in the past year." Marcus printed out the report, and I reviewed it while sitting in my office. The numbers were even worse than I'd thought. Victoria had been using her employee discount to buy thousands of dollars worth of merchandise, much of which never made it to the sales floor. She'd been treating my stores like her personal shopping mall. I also discovered that she'd been authorizing returns for items she'd taken from my personal collection, essentially giving herself store credit for clothes she'd stolen from me. It was a sophisticated scheme that had been going on for over a year. "Marcus," I said, "I need you to change all the protocols for employee purchases and returns. From now on, any transaction over $200 needs my personal approval." "Of course, Mrs. Douglas. Should I ask why?" "Let's just say I've discovered some irregularities that need to be addressed." Tuesday morning, Victoria showed up at my house unannounced. I watched her through the window as she walked up my driveway, wearing jeans and a t-shirt that actually belonged to her, looking smaller and more uncertain than I'd seen her in years. I opened the door before she could knock. "We need to talk," she said. "Yes, we do. Come in." We sat in my living room, and for a moment neither of us spoke. Victoria looked around the room as if seeing it with new eyes, taking in the expensive furniture, the original artwork, the obvious signs of success and good taste. "I've been thinking about what you said Saturday night," she said finally. And I think I understand now what I was doing to you. How it made you feel." "Do you?" "That night was horrible. Everyone kept looking at me like something was wrong with me. People who usually compliment my outfits were trying to find nice things to say about that awful suit. I felt invisible and ugly and ashamed." "That's exactly how you made me feel at every family gathering for 2 years. Victoria nodded, tears starting to form in her eyes. "I told myself I was helping you. I convinced myself that you needed my guidance, that you didn't understand what was appropriate for a woman your age. But that wasn't really what it was about, was it? Victoria was quiet for a long moment. No, it wasn't. What was it about? I think. She hesitated, then continued. I think I was jealous of you. Jealous? Of what? Of everything. Your success, your money, your confidence. Even your age, in a way. My age? You get to be taken seriously just for existing. You've already accomplished things. You've already proven yourself. I'm 32 years old, and I feel like I'm still pretending to be a grown-up. I studied her face, looking for signs that this was just another manipulation, but she seemed genuinely vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen since she was a child. So you decided to make me smaller so you could feel bigger? I don't think I decided it consciously, but yes, I think that's what happened. When you looked frumpy and uncertain, I felt more sophisticated and put together in comparison. And when I paid for your clothes and lifestyle, you felt successful even though you hadn't earned any of it. Victoria nodded miserably. I know how awful that sounds. It sounds honest, finally. We sat in silence for a moment. Outside, I could hear the sound of my neighbor's lawnmower, the normal suburban sounds of a Tuesday morning. What happens now? Victoria asked. That depends on you. What do you mean? I mean you have some choices to make. You can continue being angry that I cut off your access to my money and clothes. You can continue feeling entitled to a lifestyle you haven't earned. You can continue seeing me as someone to be managed and controlled. Or you can figure out who you really are when you're not wearing my clothes and spending my money. You can learn what it means to build something real instead of something borrowed. Victoria was crying now, not the pretty tears she used to produce when she wanted something from me, but ugly, honest sobs. I don't know how to do that. I don't know who I am without all the things you've given me. Then it's time to find out. What if I can't afford to be anyone worth knowing? Victoria, you have a college degree and a job at a prestigious magazine. You're intelligent and capable. The only reason you can't afford your lifestyle is because your lifestyle costs more than you make. But everyone expects me to look a certain way now. My colleagues, my friends, people on social media. Let them expect whatever they want. Their expectations aren't your responsibility. Victoria wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I don't know where to start. Start by moving to an apartment you can actually afford. Start by buying clothes with your own money. Start by building a life that's sustainable without my financial support. And what about us? What about our relationship? Our relationship will depend on whether you can learn to respect me as an adult woman who's capable of making her own decisions about her appearance and her life. Victoria nodded slowly. I want to try. I want to do better. Good, but Victoria, I need you to understand something very clearly. The days of you controlling how I look or what I wear are over. Permanently. If you ever again try to tell me what's appropriate for me to wear, or bring me clothes you think I should put on, or make comments designed to make me feel bad about my appearance, I will cut contact with you completely. I understand. And I need you to return everything you've taken from my closet and my stores. Everything. No excuses, no negotiating, no keeping things because they look better on you. What if I've already worn some of it to events? What if it's not in perfect condition? Then you'll replace it or compensate me for it. Victoria looked overwhelmed. That's going to cost thousands of dollars. Then you'll work extra jobs, or get a loan, or figure out some other way to make it right. But you will make it right. And what about the credit cards? What about my rent? You'll figure out how to pay for your own life, just like every other adult in the world. Victoria was quiet for a long time, and I could see her processing everything I'd said. Part of me felt cruel for being so harsh, but a larger part of me knew that this was necessary. She needed to experience real consequences for her actions, and she needed to learn that her choices had costs. Mom, she said finally, I really am sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I'm genuinely sorry for what I did to you. I believe you're sorry that you got caught. I believe you're sorry that you're facing consequences. But I'm not sure you're sorry for what you actually did to me. I am, though. Wearing that suit Saturday night, feeling invisible and ugly and ashamed, I finally understood what I'd been doing to you, and I'm horrified by it. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and I saw something I hadn't seen in years. I saw the little girl who used to help me organize my jewelry box, who used to tell me I was the most beautiful mom in the world, who used to be proud of me instead of trying to control me. Victoria, I said softly, I love you. I will always love you. But love doesn't mean accepting unacceptable behavior. Love doesn't mean letting someone diminish you or control you or steal from you. I know. Do you? Because for the past 2 years, you've been treating me like someone who exists for your convenience. Like my money and my clothes and my self-esteem were yours to manage as you saw fit. I never thought of it that way, but you're right. I'm not your ATM, Victoria. I'm not your personal stylist or your fashion consultant. I'm your mother, and I deserve the same respect you'd give to any other adult. Victoria nodded, fresh tears starting to fall. What can I do to make this right? You can start by returning my belongings and figuring out how to pay me back. You can start by learning to live within your actual means. And you can start by treating me like an adult who's capable of making her own decisions. And then we'll see. Rebuilding trust takes time, Victoria. It takes consistent actions over a long period. It takes proving that you've actually changed, not just promising that you will. We talked for another hour, working out the practical details of how she would return my belongings and begin making financial amends. It was a difficult conversation, full of tears and hard truths, but it felt more honest than any conversation we'd had in years. When Victoria left that day, I felt drained but hopeful. For the first time in our relationship, we'd talked about real things instead of surface pleasantries. For the first time, Victoria had acknowledged the impact of her actions, instead of defending them. I didn't know if she would actually follow through on her promises. I didn't know if she would really change, or if this was just another performance designed to get what she wanted. But I knew that I had drawn clear boundaries, and I knew that I would enforce them. Most importantly, I knew that I would never again let anyone make me feel ashamed of who I was, or unworthy of looking and feeling beautiful. I had reclaimed my power, my confidence, and my right to take up space in the world. The woman who had been diminished and controlled was gone. In her place was Ramona Douglas, successful entrepreneur, loving but not enabling mother, and a woman who knew her own worth. The following week brought a series of revelations that I hadn't expected. Wednesday morning, I received a call from my accountant, Patricia, asking if I wanted to schedule a meeting to discuss some unusual activity she'd noticed in my business accounts. What kind of unusual activity? I asked, though I suspected I already knew. There have been some irregular transactions over the past 18 months. Nothing that would trigger automatic alerts, but when I was reviewing the quarterly reports, I noticed a pattern that concerns me. I scheduled the meeting for that afternoon and spent the morning mentally preparing myself for what I might discover. If Victoria had been this bold about stealing from my personal accounts and wardrobe, it was possible she'd found ways to access my business funds as well. Patricia's office was in a sleek downtown building, all glass and steel that reflected the autumn sky. I'd been working with her for over a decade, and she'd helped me navigate the financial complexities of growing my business from a single boutique to a multi-location chain. Mona, thank you for coming in on such short notice, Patricia said as she led me to her conference room. She had several folders spread across the polished table, each one thick with financial documents. What exactly have you found? I asked, settling into the leather chair across from her. Over the past 18 months, there have been numerous transfers from your business accounts to what appear to be personal expenses. None of them individually large enough to require your signature, but collectively they total nearly $60,000. My stomach dropped. $60,000? The transfers were all authorized by someone with access to your business accounts. According to our records, Victoria has been an authorized user on the secondary business account since she was in college. Patricia opened one of the folders and showed me page after page of transactions. Rent payments for Victoria's expensive apartment, charged directly to my business account as if they were legitimate business expenses. Car payments for a BMW I hadn't known she owned. Credit card payments, student loan payments, even what appeared to be vacation expenses. How is this possible? I asked, though even as I said it, I realized I knew exactly how it was possible. I'd given Victoria access to that account years ago for genuine emergencies, and I'd never monitored it closely because I trusted her. The transactions were categorized as consulting fees, marketing expenses, and business development costs. Technically, they required documentation, but that documentation was never provided. Patricia handed me another folder. I've also found evidence of what appears to be inventory manipulation at your stores. Items marked as damaged or returned, but without proper paperwork. Items transferred between locations without proper tracking. It's sophisticated enough that it took me weeks to piece together the pattern. I thought about all the times Victoria had visited my stores, how comfortable she'd seemed behind the counter, how my employees had treated her like part of the management team. She'd been using her access to my business to supplement her lifestyle in ways I'd never imagined. Patricia, what are my legal options here? That depends on how you want to handle it. Technically, this could be considered embezzlement, since she was taking money under false pretenses. But pursuing criminal charges against your own daughter would be complicated, both legally and personally. And if I don't pursue criminal charges? You could handle it as a civil matter. Demand repayment, revoke all her access to your accounts, and put safeguards in place to prevent it from happening again. I spent the rest of the afternoon going through every document Patricia had prepared, trying to understand the full scope of what Victoria had been doing. The theft was more extensive and more sophisticated than I'd realized. She hadn't just been taking advantage of my generosity, she'd been systematically defrauding my business. By the time I left Patricia's office, I felt sick. Not just because of the money, though $60,000 was significant, but because of what it represented. Victoria hadn't just been controlling my appearance and stealing my clothes. She'd been treating my entire life, my business, my financial security, as her personal resource. That evening, I sat in my home office, surrounded by financial documents and legal papers, trying to decide what to do next. Part of me wanted to call the police, to have Victoria arrested for theft and embezzlement. She deserved to face real consequences for what she'd done. But another part of me, the part that remembered holding her as a baby, teaching her to ride a bike, helping her with homework, couldn't bring myself to destroy her life completely. I was angry, betrayed, hurt beyond words, but she was still my daughter. I picked up my phone and called my lawyer, Mitchell. He listened quietly as I explained what Patricia had discovered, occasionally asking clarifying questions but mostly just letting me talk through the enormity of what I'd learned. Mona, he said when I finished, I have to ask, do you want justice or do you want your daughter back? I want both. That might not be possible. If you pursue this legally, Victoria could face serious criminal charges. Embezzlement of this magnitude could result in jail time, especially given the sophisticated nature of the scheme. And if I don't pursue it legally, then you'll need to find another way to ensure she faces consequences and makes restitution. But you'll need to be prepared for the possibility that she might not take responsibility for what she's done, especially if she knows she's not facing criminal charges. I spent that night lying awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what Charlie would have done in this situation. He'd loved Victoria fiercely, but he'd also believed in accountability and consequences. He wouldn't have wanted to see her life destroyed, but he wouldn't have tolerated what she'd done either. Thursday morning, I made my decision. I called Victoria and asked her to meet me at my office that afternoon. I didn't explain why, just told her it was important, and that she needed to be there at 3 o'clock. Victoria arrived 10 minutes early, looking nervous and uncertain. She was wearing clothes that actually belonged to her, probably because she didn't have access to my credit cards anymore, and the difference was striking. Without the expensive clothes and professional styling, she looked younger, more vulnerable, more like the daughter I remembered. "Mom, what's this about?" she asked as she sat down across from my desk. I opened the folder Patricia had prepared and slid it across the desk to her. "This is about $60,000 you've stolen from my business over the past 18 months. Victoria's face went white. She opened the folder and started flipping through the documents, her hands shaking slightly. "I can explain," she said after a few minutes. "Please do." "I never meant for it to go this far. It started small, just a few $100s here and there when I was short on rent. I always planned to pay it back." $60,000 isn't a few $100s here and there, Victoria. I know, it got out of control. I kept thinking I'd get a raise or a better job, something that would let me pay you back before you noticed. But instead, you kept taking more. Victoria closed the folder and looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Mom. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm genuinely, truly sorry." "Sorry that you got caught, or sorry that you did it?" "Both. I'm sorry I did it, and I'm sorry it took getting caught for me to realize how wrong it was." I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or deception, but she seemed genuinely remorseful, more remorseful than I'd seen her about anything in years. "Victoria, what you've done is embezzlement. It's a felony. You could go to prison for this. Are you going to have me arrested?" "I don't know yet. That depends on what you do next." "What do you mean?" I pulled out another folder, one I'd prepared that morning. "I mean, you have a choice. You can continue making excuses and hoping this will just go away, or you can take full responsibility and work to make it right." "What would that look like?" "It would look like you signing a promissory note for the full amount you've stolen, plus interest. It would look like you getting a second job or finding some other way to start making payments immediately. It would look like you submitting to regular financial audits to ensure you're not stealing from anyone else." Victoria stared at the promissory note I'd placed in front of her. $60,000 plus interest. That's going to take me years to pay back. "Then you should have thought about that before you took it." "What if I can't make the payments?" "Then I'll pursue criminal charges and let a judge decide what your consequences should be." Victoria picked up the pen I'd placed next to the promissory note, then set it down again. "If I sign this, what happens to our relationship?" "That depends on whether you actually follow through on your commitments. Words are easy, Victoria. Promises are easy. What's hard is actually changing your behavior and making amends for what you've done. But there's a chance we could fix things between us." "There's a chance, yes, but only if you prove that you're genuinely committed to change, not just sorry that you got caught." Victoria picked up the pen again and stared at the promissory note for several minutes. I could see her calculating, weighing her options, trying to figure out if there was a way to minimize the consequences of her actions. "If I sign this," she said finally, "I want something in return. You're not in a position to negotiate, Victoria. I want you to give me a chance to prove that I've changed. I want you to not immediately assume the worst about every decision I make going forward. That's not something I can promise. Trust has to be earned back slowly, through consistent actions over time. But you'll give me the opportunity to earn it back? If you sign that note and start making payments immediately, yes, I'll give you the opportunity." Victoria signed the promissory note, her hand shaking slightly as she wrote her name. As soon as the ink was dry, I felt a mixture of relief and sadness. Relief that she was finally facing real consequences for her actions, and sadness that our relationship had deteriorated to the point where legal documents were necessary. "There's something else," I said, pulling out a third folder. Victoria's face fell. "What now?" "This is a detailed inventory of everything you've taken from my personal collection and my stores. Clothes, shoes, accessories, jewelry. I need all of it back within 2 weeks." Victoria opened the folder and gasped. The list was extensive, covering items worth tens of thousands of dollars. "Mom, I don't have all of this anymore. Some of it I've worn, some of it I've given away, some of it might be damaged." "Then you'll replace it or compensate me for it. That's going to cost even more money. Then you'll figure out how to earn more money." Victoria looked overwhelmed. "How am I supposed to pay back $60,000 plus interest, plus replace thousands of dollars worth of clothes and accessories, plus pay for my own living expenses?" "The same way every other adult manages their finances. You'll budget, you'll prioritize, you'll work extra jobs if necessary. But my job at the magazine barely pays enough to cover my basic expenses." "Then maybe you need a different job. or a second job. Or maybe you need to drastically reduce your expenses. Victoria was crying again, but these tears seemed different from the manipulative ones I'd grown accustomed to. These seemed like the tears of someone finally understanding the magnitude of what they'd done. "I don't know how to live like that," she said quietly. "Then you'll learn. Just like everyone else who doesn't have someone else paying their bills. What if I can't do it? What if I can't change? Then you'll face the consequences of that choice, just like you're facing the consequences of your previous choices." We sat in silence for several minutes, Victoria staring at the documents she'd signed, me watching her process the reality of her situation. "Mom," she said finally, "I want you to know that I understand now. Not just about the money, but about everything. The way I treated you, the way I controlled your appearance, the way I made you feel small. I understand that it was wrong. Understanding that it was wrong is just the first step. The real test is whether you can actually change your behavior. I want to try. I really do." "Good. Because Victoria, this is your last chance. If you steal from me again, if you try to control my appearance again, if you lie to me or manipulate me again, I will cut contact with you permanently. I understand. I hope you do, because I love you, but I won't sacrifice my own well-being for your convenience anymore." After Victoria left, I sat in my office for a long time, thinking about everything that had happened. The confrontation had been emotionally exhausting, but it had also been necessary. For the first time in years, Victoria was facing real consequences for her actions. More importantly, I had taken back control of my life. I was no longer allowing her to steal from me, control me, or diminish me. I was setting clear boundaries and enforcing them consistently. The next few days brought a series of phone calls from Victoria, each one more frantic than the last. She'd started going through her belongings, trying to figure out what she could return and what she'd have to replace, and the reality of her situation was sinking in. "Mom, I found most of the jewelry, but some of the clothes are damaged. What do I do about those?" "You replace them or compensate me for them. But that's going to cost thousands of dollars. Then you'll need to find a way to earn thousands of dollars." "Mom, I went to 3 different employment agencies this week, and no one has anything that pays significantly more than what I'm making now." "Then you'll need to get creative. Freelance work, part-time jobs, selling things you own. Other people manage to support themselves without stealing from their parents." "I'm trying, but it's harder than I thought." "I'm sure it is. That's why most people don't choose to live beyond their means." By Friday, Victoria had returned about half of the items on my list. Some were in perfect condition, others showed signs of wear, and a few were clearly damaged beyond repair. For those, she'd included handwritten IOUs promising to replace them as soon as she could afford to. Looking at the returned items spread across my dining room table, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. These were my clothes, my accessories, things I'd worked hard to be able to afford. But seeing them again also reminded me of how much Victoria had taken from me, not just in terms of material possessions, but in terms of dignity and self-respect. Saturday morning, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years. I got dressed in one of my favorite outfits, one that Victoria had never criticized or tried to change, and I went shopping for myself. Not for Victoria, not to replace things she'd stolen, but simply because I wanted to treat myself to something beautiful. I drove to the high-end shopping district downtown, parked in front of my favorite department store, and spent the morning trying on clothes that made me feel confident and attractive. I bought a silk scarf in a vibrant blue that brought out my eyes, a cashmere sweater that felt like a hug, and a pair of shoes that made me feel tall and powerful. As I was leaving the store, my arms full of shopping bags, I ran into someone I hadn't seen in months. Sarah Peterson had been a close friend years ago, but we'd drifted apart after Charlie died, partly because I'd become so withdrawn and self-conscious about my appearance. "Mona, how wonderful to see you," Sarah said, her face lighting up with genuine pleasure. "You look absolutely radiant." "Thank you, Sarah. It's good to see you too. I was just thinking about you last week. How are you doing? How's Victoria?" "I'm doing well. Really well, actually. Victoria is learning some important lessons about responsibility and accountability." Sarah raised an eyebrow. That sounds ominous. Not ominous, just honest. We've had some challenges, but I think we're working through them. Well, you certainly look like you're thriving. What's your secret? I thought about that question as I drove home. What was my secret? How had I gone from feeling invisible and ashamed to feeling confident and radiant in the space of just a few weeks? The answer, I realized, was that I'd stopped letting other people define my worth. I'd stopped accepting other people's opinions about what was appropriate for me, what I deserved, how I should look and feel and behave. I'd reclaimed my right to make my own choices about my own life. That evening, I called my sister Janet, who lived across the country. We'd always been close, but our conversations over the past few years had become stilted and infrequent, partly because I'd been so self-conscious about everything. "Mona, what a lovely surprise," Janet said when she answered the phone. "How are you?" "I'm good, Jan, really good. Actually, I was wondering if you'd like to come visit sometime soon. I feel like we haven't had a real conversation in years." "I'd love that. Is everything okay? You sound different. Happier." "I am happier. I've made some big changes in my life recently." We talked for over an hour, catching up on family news, sharing stories, laughing about childhood memories. It felt wonderful to connect with someone who knew me as more than just Victoria's mother or Charlie's widow. "Mona," Janet said near the end of our conversation, "I have to tell you something. I've been worried about you for the past couple of years. You seemed so withdrawn, so uncertain about yourself. It's wonderful to hear you sounding like yourself again." "What do you mean? You used to be so confident, so sure of yourself." "After Charlie died, that was understandable. Grief changes people. But even as time passed, you seemed to get smaller instead of stronger. I'm glad to hear that's changing." After I hung up with Janet, I thought about what she'd said. Had I really become smaller over the past few years? Had my confidence eroded so gradually that I hadn't noticed it happening? Looking back, I could see that it had. Victoria's criticism and control had been so gradual, so seemingly well-intentioned, that I hadn't recognized it as abuse. I'd interpreted her comments about my appearance as concern for my well-being. I'd accepted her financial dependence as normal family support. I'd allowed her to diminish me so slowly that I'd almost forgotten who I really was. But now I was remembering. I was remembering that I was a successful businesswoman who'd built something meaningful from nothing. I was remembering that I was an attractive, intelligent woman who deserved to be treated with respect. I was remembering that I had value beyond what I could provide for other people. Sunday morning, I decided to visit Charlie's grave for the first time in months. I'd been avoiding the cemetery, partly because it made me sad, but mostly because I'd been ashamed of who I'd become. I hadn't wanted Charlie to see me looking frumpy and defeated. But today I felt different. I wore a beautiful dress that made me feel confident, I did my hair and makeup carefully, and I brought fresh flowers that matched the autumn colors around the cemetery. Standing at Charlie's gravestone, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. "I found my way back," I said quietly. "It took me a while, but I found my way back to being the woman you fell in love with." The wind rustled through the trees, and for a moment I could almost hear Charlie's voice telling me he was proud of me for standing up for myself, for refusing to be diminished, for reclaiming my life. Monday morning brought a surprise. Victoria called early, before I'd even finished my coffee, and asked if she could come by to talk. Her voice sounded different, more mature somehow, less entitled. When she arrived, I was surprised by her appearance. She was wearing simple, inexpensive clothes that actually fit properly and looked nice on her. Her hair was styled simply but attractively, and she wore minimal makeup. She looked like a younger version of herself, before she'd become obsessed with expensive labels and designer everything. "You look nice," I said as I let her in. "Thank you. I've been learning to shop at normal stores, with normal prices. It's actually kind of liberating." We sat in my living room and Victoria pulled out a notebook filled with handwritten calculations. "I've been working on a budget," she said. "Figuring out how to pay you back while still covering my basic expenses." She showed me pages of careful calculations, lists of potential additional income sources, plans for reducing her monthly expenses. She'd clearly put a lot of thought and effort into this. "I found a weekend job at a retail store," she continued. It doesn't pay much, but it's something. And I'm going to start freelance writing in the evenings. I also found a roommate, which will cut my rent in half. That's good, Victoria. That's real progress. I also want to talk to you about something else. I've been thinking about why I did what I did. Not just the stealing, but the way I treated you. Okay. I think I was scared of getting older. Scared of not being special anymore. You're so accomplished, so successful, and I felt like I was failing in comparison. Making you look worse made me feel better about myself. That's a painful realization. It is. But I think it's important that I understand it so I can make sure it doesn't happen again. We talked for another hour about her insights, her plans, her commitment to change. For the first time in years, I felt like I was talking to my actual daughter, not the entitled, manipulative person she'd become. Mom, she said as she was getting ready to leave, I want you to know that seeing you at Mike's engagement party, seeing how beautiful and confident you looked, it made me realize what I'd been taking away from you. What do you mean? You were radiant that night. You were yourself again. And I realized that for years, I'd been stealing that from you, making you smaller so I could feel bigger. I'm glad you can see that now. I promise you, I will never do anything like that again. You deserve to feel beautiful and confident. You deserve to shine. After Victoria left, I sat in my living room feeling cautiously optimistic. She seemed genuinely committed to change, genuinely remorseful about what she'd done. But I also knew that real change takes time, and that actions matter more than words. Over the next few weeks, Victoria proved her commitment in small but meaningful ways. She made her first payment on the promissory note exactly on time and for the full amount she'd promised. She returned more of my belongings, including some items I hadn't even realized were missing. She started showing up to family events dressed appropriately but not expensively, and she never once commented on my appearance. Most importantly, she started treating me like an adult who was capable of making her own decisions. She stopped offering unsolicited advice about my clothes, my hair, my social plans. She stopped assuming that she knew better than I did about what was appropriate for me. The transformation wasn't complete, and I knew it would take time to fully rebuild trust between us. But for the first time in years, I felt like I had my daughter back. Not the entitled, controlling person she'd become, but the kind, thoughtful person I'd raised her to be. And I had myself back too. I was no longer allowing anyone to diminish me, control me, or make me feel ashamed of who I was. I was Ramona Douglas, successful entrepreneur, loving mother, and a woman who deserved to take up space in the world. The clothes Victoria had stolen were just fabric and thread. The money she'd taken was just numbers on a bank statement. But what she'd really taken from me was my sense of self-worth, my confidence, my right to feel beautiful and valuable. Getting those things back was worth more than any amount of money she could ever repay. 6 months later, I stood in the mirror of my master bedroom, putting the finishing touches on my makeup before heading to my niece's wedding. The woman looking back at me was confident, radiant, and completely in control of her own appearance. I wore a stunning emerald green dress that I'd chosen because I loved the way it made my eyes sparkle, paired with jewelry that Charlie had given me, and shoes that made me feel tall and elegant. The transformation wasn't just in my appearance, though that was certainly part of it. The real change was deeper, more fundamental. I'd reclaimed my sense of self, my right to make my own choices, my understanding of my own worth. I was no longer the woman who allowed others to diminish her or control her, or make her feel ashamed of who she was. Victoria knocked on my front door at exactly the time we'd agreed upon. When I opened it, I was pleased to see her looking lovely in a navy blue dress that she'd bought with her own money. She'd learned to shop for quality pieces that fit well and looked elegant without breaking her budget. Her hair was styled simply but beautifully, and she wore subtle makeup that enhanced her natural features. "You look gorgeous, Mom," she said, and I could hear the genuine admiration in her voice. "Thank you, sweetheart. You look beautiful too." The drive to the wedding venue was comfortable, filled with easy conversation about work, family, and the small details of our daily lives. Victoria had been making steady progress on paying me back, both financially and in terms of rebuilding trust between us. She'd kept every promise she'd made, met every deadline, and demonstrated through consistent actions that she was genuinely committed to change. "How are things going with the freelance writing?" I asked as we pulled into the parking lot at the country club where the wedding was being held. Really well, actually. I'm making enough extra income that I might be able to increase my monthly payments to you starting next month. That's wonderful, but don't sacrifice your own well-being to pay me back faster. I'd rather you pay me back steadily over time than burn yourself out trying to rush the process. Victoria smiled. I appreciate that, but I want to pay you back as quickly as possible. It feels good to know that I'm making real progress toward fixing what I broke. As we walked into the country club, I noticed the way other guests looked at us. There were no pitying glances in my direction, no whispered concerns about my financial situation or my ability to dress appropriately. Instead, I saw admiration, compliments, the kind of positive attention that comes from looking confident and put together. My sister-in-law Margaret approached us within minutes of our arrival. Mona, you look absolutely stunning. That dress is perfect on you. Thank you, Margaret. You look lovely as well. Margaret turned to Victoria with a warm smile. And Victoria, how nice to see you looking so happy and healthy. You both look wonderful. Throughout the cocktail hour, the pattern continued. Family members complimented both of us, but the tone was completely different from what I'd experienced over the past few years. People talked to me as an equal, not as someone to be pitied or managed. They asked about my business, my travels, my plans for the future. They treated me like the successful, accomplished woman I was. Victoria seemed to be genuinely enjoying herself as well, but in a different way than she had at previous family events. Instead of basking in the attention that came from wearing expensive clothes she couldn't afford, she seemed content to be part of the celebration without needing to be the center of attention. During dinner, I found myself seated next to my cousin Robert, who'd always been one of my favorite family members. We caught up on family news, shared stories about our businesses, and laughed about childhood memories. Mona, Robert said during a lull in the conversation, I have to tell you how impressed I am with the changes you've made over the past few months. You seem like yourself again. What do you mean? For a while there you seemed so uncertain, so withdrawn. I was worried about you. But tonight, you're glowing. You seem confident and happy and completely at ease with yourself. I've learned some important lessons about not letting other people define my worth. Whatever you've learned, keep doing it. You look beautiful, but more than that, you look like you know you're beautiful. After dinner, there was dancing, and I found myself on the dance floor more than I had in years. Family members asked me to dance, and I accepted every invitation with pleasure. I felt graceful, confident, attractive. I felt like the woman Charlie had fallen in love with. The woman who'd built a successful business. The woman who deserved to take up space in the world. During a slow song, Victoria appeared at my side. May I cut in? She asked the cousin I'd been dancing with. We danced together for a moment, something we hadn't done since she was a little girl, and would stand on my feet while I swayed to music in our living room. Mom, she said quietly, I want to thank you. For what? For forcing me to confront what I'd become. For not letting me get away with treating you badly. For giving me a chance to become a better person. You did the hard work of changing, Victoria. I just set some boundaries. But you could have had me arrested. You could have cut me out of your life completely. Instead, you gave me an opportunity to make things right. Because despite everything that happened, I love you. I want you in my life, but only if you can respect me as an adult, who's capable of making her own decisions. I do respect you. More than I ever have before. Seeing you tonight, seeing how confident and beautiful you are, I'm reminded of who you've always been underneath all the ways I tried to control you. The song ended, and we made our way back to our table. The wedding was winding down, but I wasn't ready for the evening to end. I felt energized, alive, connected to my family in a way I hadn't experienced in years. Are you ready to go? Victoria asked as the bride and groom prepared to leave for their honeymoon. Actually, I think I'd like to stay for a little while longer. You're welcome to stay too, or I can call a cab later. I'll stay. I'm having a good time too. We stayed for another hour, talking with family members, sharing stories, enjoying the celebration. When we finally left, I felt completely satisfied with the evening. I'd looked beautiful, felt confident, and enjoyed myself thoroughly without any anxiety about my appearance or my place in the family. Thank you for a lovely evening, I said to Victoria as she walked me to my front door. Thank you for letting me be part of it. And Mom, yes, I'm proud to be your daughter. I should have said that years ago, but I'm saying it now. The following Monday, I received a call from Patricia, my accountant, asking if I had time to review Victoria's latest payment and discuss her progress toward full restitution. She's been remarkably consistent, Patricia said when I arrived at her office. Every payment has been on time and for the full amount. At this rate, she'll have paid back the full amount in about 18 months. How are her financial records looking otherwise? Much better. She's living within her means, she's building a small emergency fund, and she seems to have developed genuinely responsible financial habits. That's encouraging. Mona, I have to say I'm impressed with how you've handled this situation. You held her accountable without destroying her, and it seems to have resulted in real, lasting change. Patricia was right. Victoria had changed, not just in terms of her financial behavior, but in her overall approach to our relationship. She no longer tried to control my appearance or my choices. She no longer treated my resources as her own. She respected my autonomy and treated me like an adult who was capable of managing her own life. More importantly, I had changed. I no longer allowed others to define my worth or make decisions about my appearance. I trusted my own judgment, valued my own opinions, and refused to be diminished by anyone's criticism or control. That afternoon, I decided to do something I'd been considering for months. I called my lawyer, Mitchell, and asked him to help me update my will and estate planning documents. Are you making changes because of what happened with Victoria? He asked. Partly yes, but mostly because I want to make sure my legacy reflects my values. I want to reward responsibility and kindness, not entitlement and manipulation. What did you have in mind? I want to set up a trust for Victoria that she can access gradually, as long as she continues to demonstrate responsible behavior. I want to include provisions for my employees, particularly those who've been with me for many years. And I want to establish a scholarship fund for young women starting their own businesses. Mitchell and I spent several hours working through the details of my new estate plan. It felt good to make decisions based on my own values and priorities, rather than simply defaulting to traditional family expectations. 2 weeks later, I had lunch with Victoria to discuss the changes I'd made to my will. I wanted her to understand that her inheritance wasn't guaranteed, that it depended on her continued growth and responsible behavior. I'm not telling you this to threaten you, I explained as we sat in a quiet restaurant downtown. I'm telling you because I want you to understand that respect and trust have to be earned and maintained over time. I understand, Mom, and I think it's fair. I don't deserve to inherit anything just because I'm your daughter. I need to earn it by being the kind of person you'd be proud to call your heir. You're already becoming that person, Victoria, but it's important that you continue on this path, not just until you've paid me back, but for the rest of your life. I will. I promise. Promises are easy to make and hard to keep. What I care about are your actions, your choices, the way you treat me and others going forward. Victoria nodded seriously. I know I have more to prove. I know that rebuilding trust takes time, but I want you to know that I'm committed to being worthy of your love and respect. After lunch, we walked through the downtown shopping district together, something we hadn't done in years without it turning into a battle over my appearance, or an expensive shopping spree funded by my credit cards. Would you like to stop anywhere? Victoria asked as we passed my favorite department store. Actually, yes. I've been thinking about buying a new winter coat. We went into the store together, and Victoria helped me try on coats, offering opinions when I asked for them but never criticizing my choices or trying to steer me towards something she thought was more appropriate. When I found a coat I loved, a beautiful cashmere blend in a rich burgundy color, she smiled genuinely. That looks gorgeous on you, Mom. It's perfect. You don't think it's too young for me? Too bright? I think it's exactly right for you. You should buy whatever makes you feel beautiful and confident. The change in her attitude was remarkable. Instead of trying to diminish me or control me, she was encouraging me to choose things that made me feel good about myself. Instead of seeing my confidence as a threat, she seemed genuinely happy to see me looking and feeling my best. Over the next few months, our relationship continued to strengthen. Victoria kept all of her financial commitments, maintained her responsible spending habits, and continued to treat me with the respect I deserved. More importantly, she seemed genuinely happy with the person she was becoming. "I like my life better now," she told me one evening when she came by for dinner. "I like earning what I have. I like knowing that my accomplishments are real, not borrowed from someone else. You seem more relaxed, more confident in yourself." "I think I am. When I was living beyond my means and taking things from you, I was always anxious about getting caught, always worried that people would figure out that I couldn't really afford the life I was living. Now I don't have to pretend to be anyone other than who I really am. And who are you really?" Victoria thought about that for a moment. "I'm someone who's still figuring things out, but I'm doing it honestly. Now. I'm someone who makes mistakes, but takes responsibility for them. I'm someone who loves her mother and wants to make her proud." "You do make me proud, Victoria, not because of what you wear or how much money you make, but because you've shown the courage to change when change was hard." That spring, Victoria was promoted at the magazine, a recognition of her hard work and talent that had nothing to do with her appearance or her financial situation. She called me immediately to share the good news. "Mom, I got the promotion. Senior editor. It comes with a significant salary increase." "Victoria, that's wonderful. I'm so proud of you. The best part is, I know I earned it. My boss said it was because of the quality of my writing and my work ethic. It has nothing to do with how I look or who I know or what I wear." That must feel incredible. It does. And the salary increase means I can pay you back even faster if you'll let me. We'll talk about that. Right now, just enjoy your success. You've worked hard for this. The promotion marked a turning point for Victoria. She'd achieved something significant through her own efforts, without relying on my money or borrowed prestige. She'd proven to herself that she was capable of success on her own terms. That summer, we took a vacation together for the first time in years. Just a long weekend at a beach resort, but it felt like a major milestone in our relationship. We spent time talking, laughing, enjoying each other's company, without any underlying tension about money or control or appearance. "I love seeing you like this," Victoria said one evening as we watched the sunset from our hotel balcony. "Like what?" "Relaxed, confident, beautiful. Just completely yourself." "This is who I've always been, Victoria. I just lost sight of it for a while." "I'm sorry I contributed to that. I'm sorry I ever made you feel like you needed to be smaller or less visible or less beautiful. I'm not angry about that anymore. What matters is that we both learned from it and changed." "Do you think we'll ever get back to the way things were before?" I thought about that question. The truth was, I didn't want to go back to the way things were before. Before, our relationship had been built on my generosity and her dependence, on my desire to help and her willingness to take. That dynamic had been inherently unbalanced and ultimately unsustainable. "I don't want to go back to the way things were," I said finally. "I want something better. I want a relationship between two adults who respect each other, who enjoy each other's company, who support each other without anyone being diminished in the process. I want that too." "Then that's what we'll build." By the end of that year, Victoria had paid back nearly half of what she owed me. More importantly, she'd maintained her new lifestyle and her new approach to our relationship. She continued to dress appropriately and attractively without spending beyond her means. She continued to treat me with respect and consideration. She continued to take responsibility for her choices and their consequences. For my 63rd birthday, Victoria threw me a small party at a restaurant I loved. She invited close family and friends, people who knew and appreciated me for who I really was. The evening was lovely, filled with warmth and laughter and genuine affection. "I want to say something," Victoria said when it came time for toasts. "A year ago, I was not the daughter my mother deserved. I was selfish, manipulative, and disrespectful. I took advantage of her generosity and tried to control her in ways that were completely inappropriate." The room was quiet, everyone listening carefully to her words. "My mother could have written me off completely. She could have had me arrested. She could have decided that I wasn't worth the effort it would take to rebuild our relationship. Instead, she held me accountable while still giving me a chance to change. Victoria looked directly at me. Mom, you taught me that love doesn't mean accepting unacceptable behavior. You taught me that consequences can be a form of love when they lead to growth and change. You taught me that I'm capable of being better than I was, but only if I'm willing to do the hard work of actually becoming better. She raised her glass. To my mother, who refused to let me settle for being less than I could be, and who showed me what real strength and dignity look like. As everyone toasted, I felt a profound sense of satisfaction. Not because Victoria was finally praising me, but because she truly understood what had happened between us and why it had been necessary. Later that evening, after all the guests had gone home, Victoria and I sat in my living room, both of us tired but happy. "Thank you for tonight," I said. "It was perfect. Thank you for giving me the chance to plan it. A year ago, you wouldn't have trusted me to organize anything for you. A year ago, you wouldn't have deserved that trust. And now?" I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. She was beautiful, but not because of expensive clothes or professional styling. She was beautiful because she was genuine, because she'd learned to be comfortable with who she really was. Because she'd developed the kind of inner confidence that comes from knowing you've earned what you have. Now I trust you completely. Not because you've paid back most of the money you owed me, though I appreciate that. I trust you because you've shown me, through consistent actions over time, that you've genuinely changed. I have changed. But more than that, I've learned to like who I am when I'm not pretending to be someone I can't afford to be. And I've learned that I don't have to accept being diminished by anyone, no matter how much I love them. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, both of us reflecting on how far we'd come. "Mom," Victoria said finally, "do you think Dad would be proud of how we've handled all of this?" I thought about Charlie, about his belief in accountability and growth, about his conviction that people could change if they were given the right incentives and support. I think he'd be proud of both of us. Proud of you for having the courage to change, and proud of me for having the strength to demand that change. I miss him. I miss him too, but I think he'd be happy to see us building something real and honest between us. Victoria reached over and took my hand. "I love you, Mom, not because of what you can give me, but because of who you are. I love you too, sweetheart. I always have, even when I didn't like your behavior." "I know. And I'm grateful that your love was strong enough to include holding me accountable." 2 years later, Victoria made her final payment on the promissory note she'd signed in my office that difficult day, when we'd confronted the full extent of her theft and manipulation. She'd also replaced or compensated me for every item she'd taken from my personal collection and my stores. But the money had never really been the point. The point had been about respect, dignity, accountability, and growth. The point had been about building a relationship based on mutual consideration rather than one-sided exploitation. Victoria had become the woman I'd always hoped she could be: honest, responsible, genuinely confident, kind, and respectful. She'd learned to build a life she could afford, and to find satisfaction in accomplishments she'd earned rather than privileges she'd borrowed. And I had become myself again, confident, beautiful, unafraid to take up space in the world, unwilling to be diminished by anyone's expectations or criticisms. I'd learned that love without boundaries isn't really love at all, it's enablement. I'd learned that demanding respect isn't cruel, it's necessary. Standing in my closet now, choosing what to wear to yet another family celebration, I smiled at the woman in the mirror. She was elegant, confident, and completely in control of her own image. She was someone who chose her own clothes, made her own decisions, and refused to be anyone other than exactly who she was. Victoria would be here soon to pick me up, and I knew she'd compliment my appearance genuinely and support whatever choices I'd made about how to present myself to the world. Our relationship had been transformed from one based on control and dependence to one based on mutual respect and genuine affection. The woman who'd allowed herself to be dressed in shapeless, colorless clothes while her daughter stole her designer wardrobe was gone. In her place was Ramona Douglas, successful entrepreneur, loving but not enabling mother, and a woman who knew her own worth. I'd reclaimed not just my clothes and my money, but my dignity, my confidence, and my right to shine. And in doing so, I'd given Victoria the opportunity to become someone worth being proud of. Some people might say I'd been too hard on her, that cutting off her financial support and demanding full restitution was cruel, but I knew better. Real love sometimes requires difficult choices. Real love sometimes means holding people accountable for their actions, even when it's painful for everyone involved. Victoria was thriving now, not because I'd made life easy for her, but because I'd refused to let her settle for being less than she could be. She'd learned to respect herself and others, to live honestly, to find satisfaction in things she'd earned rather than things she'd taken. And I was thriving too, not because I'd been generous enough to forgive and forget, but because I'd been strong enough to demand better. I'd learned that my worth wasn't determined by how much I was willing to sacrifice for others, but by how well I honored my own values and boundaries. The doorbell rang, and I heard Victoria's voice calling out that she was here. I took one last look in the mirror, smiled at the confident, radiant woman looking back at me, and went to answer the door. Tonight, like every night now, I would walk into a room looking exactly the way I chose to look, feeling exactly as beautiful and confident as I deserved to feel. And my daughter would be beside me, not as someone trying to control or diminish me, but as someone genuinely proud to be seen with me. We'd both learned that real beauty comes from authenticity, that real confidence comes from integrity, and that real love requires mutual respect. It had taken us both some time to figure that out, but now that we had, we were building something that would last. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.